Brandon Davis, Swan Energy.
Imran Khan, Swan Energy.
Excellent mic levels. Thank you very much for joining us this week, Mining Money. And boy, we've got ball games going on. And I was noticing the other day that the World Series or baseball playoffs has started as we're into October. And it got us talking, a few of us entrepreneurs and a few of us business owners around, the watering holes, as a lot of people do when they talk or when they watch baseball these days. And everyone's talking about investing going into 2021, and whether it's their personal finances or whether it's their portfolios. And, of course, baseball's on, so we're talking about covering all your bases. And kind of got me thinking a little bit about, off our conversation last week, kind of strength in numbers, kind of the theme that came out of our conversation last week, where covering your bases is a little bit more than strength in numbers. There's other things involved. So we bring in our Mining Money, our investment experts, if you will. Brandon Davis, CEO of Swan Energy. Imran Khan, Swan. Are you a petroleum geologist? What is your title there exactly when it comes to day-to-day operations there, Imran?
That's a good question. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, but master of none. So just kind of stay pretty involved and it's always something, either something on the finance side or something on the engineering side. Just sometimes even on the sales side.
Your degrees from where?
My degree's from Ohio State. I'm a chemical engineer with a business degree too. So we've got a little bit of both of those areas covered, and I think that's pretty much the different things that I end up doing. I'm basically a partner of Brandon's, and
he doesn't have a title. We just get shit done.
That's pretty much it. We don't get bogged down with titles and stuff like that, but you can call me something fancy though if you'd like.
No, that's okay. I'll just refer to the Ohio State University and that sort of thing. And if you were from Harvard, I'd say that your concentration is in petroleum. But whatever. We'll go beyond that. But
I've had Harvard and Columbia master's business people work for me, and Imran gets more done than they did together. So it's amazing how that prestige comes with a lot of what do you call it? Entitlement.
Well, I tell people all the time that when a guy is sleeping in his vehicle out on near a well site, 3 a.m, making a 6-figure decision with a seatbelt wedged in his back, trying to get an hour of sleep in, you're an expert at that point. You got a lot on the line, and you got a lot of decision making at that point. So, experts come in all forms and sizes, really. But we wanted to talk a little bit about safety and numbers to start off with a little bit. And Brandon, just kind of reiterate some of the points that you had last week as we talk about covering all the bases this week on investing, especially as we look at 2021. People, looking at trying to figure out ways as the end of the year comes, the importance that comes with having safety in numbers for a lot of different reasons. But from your perspective, why do you think that's important in investing right now?
I think that you can spread yourself out way further and be more diversified when you're working with a group of people and doing 2 or 3 or 4 things versus just one on your own. In addition to that, from a due diligence perspective, from a understanding what we're getting into perspective, the more people you have involved that have a general understanding of the project and can have in-depth, very heavily scrutinizing the deal conversations to ensure that you're making a good decision. I mean, that's a big part of it right now for everyone. And there's a lot of opportunity right now. There's also a lot of BS out there that there's some people that are just desperate. So you gotta step lightly, but once you determine what you want to do, you kind of have to push pretty hard because getting things done right now is a little more work than it usually is. Mainly, especially in the oil business, because there's just not as many service companies and contractors out there as there were even 7 months ago. because of the price and everything that's gone on. So, it's interesting. It's an interesting time and exciting, and there is so much opportunity out there right now.
Well, you mentioned, we were talking a little bit off the air that you guys found a pretty good deal on some rates and that sort of thing. We don't want to get into it too much, but enough to where, you guys had to go vet it to find out if we could disclose it. And in the past, we've talked about how we've had programs like this where the attorneys have had to listen to it before we could put it on the air, and a number of different things. And to me, I think that just illustrates more of that safety in numbers, to where when you've got a network of people that can do a bunch of different things, that makes it easier to go on with your day-to-day life and not get bogged down, trying to make a decision with a seatbelt wedged in your back at 2:00 in the morning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Imran, what do you got to say about that, being the restaurateur every now and then? Do you know anything about that?
To be honest with you, overall, when you think of the safety in numbers and the whole idea of due diligence, when you get into a group of folks that know what they're doing, what really happens is you cut the crap and you get into the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the main objective of doing things in a bigger group. And I've mentioned it before on our show that whether you look at things that are offshore or onshore, even the big guys that are out there, they're working together in some way or form. Maybe one of them might be doing the operations and has a percentage from that standpoint. Maybe they own a bigger percentage of it, but then they've got a few of the other guys that are minority partners in that deal that are also vetting it, looking at it, looking at it from a standpoint from their interest perspective, but also making sure that you've got extra set of eyes that come from different companies, right, or different people, and that's really important because every group has a different expertise per se, and when you can combine the right folks together, you really do cut the crap and get into the right details and be able to determine if the deal is good or not, and then you move forward.
Yeah, and the other way I like too about the due diligence side of things, comparing it to baseball, covering all your bases, as we're in October right now, is in the same way in baseball. Sometimes, you bring the infielders in a little bit or the outfielders in a little bit because the guy doesn't have as much power, or maybe he pulls a little bit to the left. That's due diligence. That's just kind of understanding the game a little bit. And, when I look at what you guys are doing at Swan Energy and how diversified you are, you have proven past investments. And, when we get into our story swapping, it's not to stroke our own egos. There's actually a little bit of purpose behind that, because those are proven, ups and downs, and that's how you learn, and that's how you go into each investment, is bringing that knowledge in. I was talking to a guy with a recycling wastewater project they're opening in the Permian Basin, just right outside of New Mexico. And he asked me, he goes, "Do you know much about this technology?" And I said, "I've been in the media for over 20 years. Every interview I do is on some bizarre subject. And guess what? I learn a little bit and bring that to the next interview and bring that to the next interview and that sort of thing." And that's kind of what you guys have done with investments that I've seen. So talk to me a little bit about, proven past investments and the importance of actually having a little bit of experience doing this.
Well, I want to start by saying it doesn't matter how much experience you have, you still screw up sometimes. I think that's kind of just part of doing business. It's not always perfect. But yeah, you do learn from each deal you do. And we've talked about this before on the show, is as you fail or things go wrong or you have issues, you learn from them and get better. And when things go good, you learn from those as well. But you learn them much faster on the losing side. So doing as many deals as I've done over the years, and I've had wells I paid for that didn't get drilled, and have judgments against people, and shit happens. It's just part of business, and so you have to navigate it with confidence and caution. And it doesn't matter if you're dealing with someone you know personally or someone you've never met. At the end of the day, it's a matter of checking references, because the reality in this business is what happened yesterday doesn't really matter today. It's good to have a great track record, but that track record doesn't mean anything going forward. It doesn't, in my opinion. So what everyone what I do is say everyone can do what they want, but what I do, I evaluate everything, each project or opportunity that comes to me on its own without looking at anything back as far as what's happened in the past, and that's how we determine what we're doing. And then from that, you start looking, if you like the deal, then you start looking at what's happened and see if that gives you more confidence. But don't have confidence in the deal going in. It jades the way you evaluate it. And so I'm very singularly tunnel vision focused on an opportunity before we start looking at anything beyond that. And the guys that are out there doing business development for me do a pretty good job vetting before it gets to me. So we at least have a pretty good idea of who we're dealing with, and that it's worth the time to do a deep dive or just a cursory dive to find out what's going on with the deal. So there's a method to our madness, and it doesn't always work. There's still, like I said, still things slip through the cracks. We miss something, but we do everything we can not to have that happen.
I always chuckle because it's like, Brandon, you like talk about, licking your wounds and that sort of thing. And, that, to me, that's understanding risk management, that not every deal works out, and that's reality. And before people invest, they need to understand that. I mean, because when the investments pay off, they pay off good, but they're never a sure thing. And I don't know. I find that, it's just kind of understanding the game a little bit, and understanding how things work. Are you seeing that people are getting that, or is there a little bit of hesitation right now in the marketplace? What are you seeing out there in terms of with some of this, some of the pressures that are out there?
Well, the pressure is kind of on everyone because there's a whole lot of cash sitting around with nowhere to go. And there's a lot of opportunities. So it's a unique time, really.
Talk to me about that sitting cash. What do you mean by that? A bunch of cash sitting around.
That sounds fun. From people, private investors, hedge fund, everyone that has investments. I mean, they have pulled a lot of money out of the market and set it aside just because things have been so irregular and volatility has it's just been so volatile that there's just a lot of cash sitting around and then there's a lot of opportunities. So then you have basically everyone out there has plenty of options as to what to do, and good deals get funded, bad deals don't. It's pretty easy to see the difference right now, and so it's just a unique time. I mean, usually there wouldn't be a lot of the deals that are available right now on the market. You wouldn't have an opportunity to get involved because they would already be eaten up by someone that was taking all of it. But with the cash on the sidelines right now, and a lot of people pulling back, and a lot of the people that fund oil and gas reeling from their losses more than they're trying to find new opportunities, it's a really good time to get into the oil business right now.
I see a lot of signals and signs that I saw in the 2002 recession and the 2008 and 2015, and those were good times to get in too, because a lot of those companies and a lot of those investments, they made it through and became very lucrative. And we've talked before about if you bought Ferrari at half price and Apple at half price and that sort of thing. To me, again, I look at the oil and gas industry and the foothold it has just on the general day-to-day life of toothpaste, PPE equipment, to the gas we need to get to the store. I just don't see it going anywhere. I see the image changing a little bit, and I see that sort of thing. But overall, I just don't understand where a lot of the hesitation is coming from a lot of the different investments and the banks and everything. Is it because of this environmental thing, or is it because of COVID, or is it just because of low oil prices? Are you guys hearing anything out there in terms of what that hesitation specifically is, or is it just a potpourri of things?
Yeah, the whole environmental thing, in my opinion, personally, is a scapegoat for what's going on in the market overall right now. To your earlier point, buyers are getting smarter. I think that's really the bottom line. And, to what Brandon was saying earlier, you have to be, right? You have to be able to learn from your mistakes, do the lessons learned analysis that you need to, lick your wounds, and make sure you get back up and run again. I think that's really, really important. You pointed out some good points earlier, Jason, about the different times when, market downfalls have occurred. You look at real estate, right? Most people didn't just jump up after the real estate crashed back in whatever it was, 08, 09, and started buying things immediately. But at the same time, folks that had cash and had capital, it was a buyer's market. Similarly, and what we're seeing right now within oil and gas, from large to small, it's a buyer's market. So things are just sitting out there if people aren't actually at a proper price. But at the same time, things that are properly priced in today's market, due to the volatility, they're great deals. So you just have to be able to have the capital behind it to be able to do the acquisitions. A lot of what we saw earlier on, probably March, April, May time, was banks really weren't willing to do much around the financing side of things. I think it was always a tough thing from that standpoint to get things moving forward. But now, maybe there's a little bit more movement, but at the same time, those banks, if they weren't doing well back then, they still aren't now. But I think there's some different. We were able to work out some deals with the right parties around that. I think we can kind of talk a little bit about some of the reserve-based loans and things like that.
Well, we just we closed at the end of the month of September, right at I think it was Monday the 28th. On a sizable reserve-based loan with the Texas bank, and we're waiting on their approval to give their info out. But it was a long, drawn-out process due to the price changing on a regular basis, which makes it hard to get engineering to a point everybody's comfortable. But they got it done, and not only did they get it done, they got it done through a lot of adversity, just because we have a lot of wells, so it was a lot of work. It's amazing because 2 years ago it didn't seem like I couldn't get a reserve-based loan because the banks wouldn't loan on anything less than $50 million. Well, ours is significantly less than that. But it's a big seven-figure number, which is perfect for us because of kind of how our business works. And the opportunity and flexibility it's going to give us is unbelievable. So we're going to be able to take advantage of more of these opportunities. Not to mention that our interest rate is 4.55%, which is just absolutely incredible. So it's a great situation. I actually this is something Imran worked on for 4 months, and I didn't think it was going to happen the whole time, and it did. So pat on the back to you, bud. That was awesome.
There were times that I didn't think it was going to happen either. Quite honestly, having the right partnership is really important, and it's just in business in general, right? If you're working with the right folks, whether it be banks, whether it be other folks that are involved in the deal with you, it does make a big difference, and that the positivity really reflects through.
And if anyone's interested, we'll make, if we can get the name of the bank and our personal rep next week, we'll do that if we can. So, it's something worth talking about for sure, because right now there are not many banks. Most banks were over leveraged when everything went sideways, and they can't lend anything. They don't have any capacity, so they're more worried about closing out bad debt than they are loaning, making new loans. So this group that we're working with was obviously not in that position, and they waited to get to the bottom, which -30 is probably. I mean, you're underwater. Like, seriously, I don't see how it could get any worse than that. It was the bottom. So it was like literally the next month is when we started talking to them, and it was amazing. I mean, they did the work that they've done, the process, and the way that they pushed it along. All of it was just absolutely phenomenal. And I've actually never worked with a bank that's more professional than the one we're working with ever. And understanding for our business, because a lot of things when you have 300 wells in 3 states, it gets complicated. And so anyway, it was very, very amazing that we got that done. I bet most people can't get that done right now.
I think part of that too is, first of all, these guys were, ready to pounce, right? I mean, they've been waiting for this market downfall to kind of happen and release capital at these levels rather than at levels where oil and gas is at $70, $80, $90 a barrel, right? So 50. You're right, even 50. So I mean, when you look at those numbers and you think about loan to value and everything, you really need to be able to and to what Brandon was saying, it probably took us 3-4 months to kind of get everything completed, but a lot of that was just building the relationship too, right? And I really feel that they believed in what they were doing.
They did, but we really didn't start until late July.
Yeah.
So really from the time we actually pulled the trigger, it took about 60 days. So a little over. So that's not bad. That's pretty damn good.
And part of it too was on our end of things too, because just because you have access to capital doesn't mean that you go out and get the capital. And finding the right strategic moves is important for a company, especially a small to mid-sized company, right? You don't want to go out and get too leveraged out there and not know what to do with it. But I think we've been looking at deals and kind of, taking a look at the deal side of the market and then kind of, making sure that we had the cash side of the market available and trying to join those two the right way at the right time. And I believe that we're doing our best to be able to make that happen.
It's a good positive story there about understanding how safety in numbers works, because it took several people to get this thing done, as well as understanding the times of uncertainty and understanding risk management and how real it can be. So this is a great example actually of what we were talking about in the first half of the interview about why it's important to have certain attributes into your investments. And I did want to ask you guys, to end on a positive story, but we kind of just had one. But we'll do a double shot here because I want to get an update on the Permian. Are you still moving ahead on the Permian, or did that deal fall through in a week?
We're still working through a lot of the back and forth and the due diligence around that.
Okay.
We should have more details soon.
Today, actually, we should get closed today.
So we're definitely moving forward with that. I think it's a great opportunity, and we're going to have a lot of great deals coming up. When you kind of just feel it in the market, right? You kind of know when you've sat there and waited, and you kind of start seeing things popping into that. That level or that grouping that you want to be able to buy in. That's kind of where we're getting at. So I think this Permian deal is definitely one of those.
Well, from a journalist standpoint, the story here is, that you guys are buying. You guys are aggressively going into the marketplace to really become a leader in the next generation of oil and gas. That's a different story for a different day where, there's a sea change happening in oil and gas. And we talked about a lot of the different, things that are going into it, but at the same time, there's just, there's a youth revolution that's been kind of happening, and that's happening in the investment side and the office side, and just some of the whole, just the day-to-day entrepreneurship, if you will. So I think it's kind of, like I said, the story is that you guys are buying and finding deals and getting into shale plays that are proven. So talk to me how people can, reach out to you, get in touch with you, if they got any questions on how to get maybe in investments going, that sort of thing. Tell me what you guys are currently looking for and how they can get in touch with you.
You can reach out to us at info@swanenergyinc.com. Again, info@swanenergyinc.com. And to your point, that's basically our objective, right? When you look at a company, it's basically a person. And, when you're going through and you're growing in your career, right, people always ask you where you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And, our company growth is tied to when you make your investments and how you actually take that and leverage it to the next level. And the other part too is pivoting, right? You got to be able to pivot and morph into a better company, not just from size, but the opportunity. And that's really where great companies are formed.
Brandon, how about you? Any thoughts on where you're looking at in investment, and any sage advice for individuals out there?
We're looking for assets that we can acquire that are either in a bad position with finances or under market, and that's it. And we're looking everywhere. I wouldn't say there's any specific place we're looking harder than another. We're just looking at everything on an opportunity by opportunity basis. So we're not locked into any specific place, and we are actually contemplating kind of changing how we put things together going forward, in more of a package of a field versus a well or two. So that's something that we're looking real hard at, because it's just easier have a group of investors that have a whole field instead of a well here and a well there, which is what we've done historically, and it works. It's just with the way the market is right now, it's a little different than it used to be. So a lot has changed in a very short period of time. I mean, it really has. So it's got to, everyone's got to reevaluate how and what they're doing and how they're getting to where they want to go. And so we've been doing a lot of that. And the further down the road we get with it, the more we've noticed how much it's changed. And literally, like, feels like it was overnight. I think 6-8 months have changed the world. Well, it has.
No, it has. I mean, when I think about, what you're talking about is not like, uncommon. There are businesses that are extravagantly or extraordinarily tweaking their business models for the second time in less than 12 months. And it's happened kind of organically, if that makes sense. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's just kind of happened because of the new marketplace. And that's kind of how I interpreted what you were talking about, Brandon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure I'm processing this.
No, you are. No, you're on the right track.
You're exactly right. And the whole idea of how you evaluate a deal, whether it's in oil and gas or whatever other market, to your point, Jason, your KPIs have to have changed, and where you're looking at and what the variables were before 6 months ago versus what the variables are today. It's eye-opening. And so it's definitely changed.
And this go around is interesting for people because, the last couple times when businesses were having to reinvent themselves, they were kind of annoyed. Now, I think people are kind of excited. They're kind of excited about kind of changing and going towards a model that just seems right. Things are just seem right with some of the changes that are going in the marketplace. And I'm glad to hear that, you guys are adapting with what's going on out there. And, just, from the vibe and everything. So good deal, man. Sounds like a lot of positivity is happening down there with Swan Energy and some of the investments you guys have going. Great rates with apparently great relationships with the bank. So if somebody's looking at having a conversation about that, feel free to reach out just based on that alone. And then, of course, you've got other activities that you're looking for too. So what's that website again? Is it swanenergyinc.com?
You got it, Jason. SwanEnergyInc.com. There's a link right on there for you to be able to contact us, and if you write anything to us, we'll definitely be able to reply pretty quickly and get it to the right group.